So he knows the scripture. He twists the scripture. False teachers mimic the devil's tactics. They abuse scripture, they quote selectively, they quote out of context, they justify errant doctrines this way, and they claim God's authority behind their words. They will ignore blatant, obvious scriptures which contradict their statements, like James 2:24. The only place in the Bible where the words faith and alone are in the same sentence, occur next to each other, is with the word not, right? Not by faith alone. That's the only place. Not by faith alone. And they will completely claim that this statement, these few words that are very obvious, say exactly the opposite of what they say. The devil is cunning. He cannot stand the truth, however, and he can only twist the truth. And he builds lies upon fragments of scripture. So the devil will quote scripture when it serves to manipulate others or to justify his schemes. And the devil's quoting of scripture is not based in a love of the truth, because, as you know, the devil's heart is very far from God, and it's very far from logic. And I need to do my talk on logic at some point. I would need to do my talk on scholasticism, rhetoric, Luther, Aquinas, Aristotle, and that's going to be really interesting. So we have to be wary of anyone who quotes the Bible to justify teachings that are contrary to the Bible's full message. Now, I can claim I just quoted scripture and therefore I'm right, and the guy next to me makes exactly the same claim, and he quotes something that is utterly contradictory to mine. How do you know who's right? Welcome, Manila. Good to see you. So how do you know who is correct, even though we're both quoting the same scriptures? Who is correct? How do you know? Because we are disagreeing on these scriptures. That cannot be, neither of us can be, well, only one of us can be correct, or potentially we are both completely wrong. So we need to find another way. The scripture itself cannot verify scripture. Scripture, how do you prove scripture from scripture? How do you prove the history of scripture from scripture? You've got to use history. You've got to use evidence. So, simply put, history matters. Now, understand this in the spirit that I present this. Angel, very welcome. History is very often a better guide than scripture. I needed a full stop over there. Gnostics, heretics, the devil, Satanists, even atheists appeal to scripture. Christianity's enemies appeal to scripture. Christianity's enemies often know scripture better than we do. Let me just fix that little typo there. Let me just put a full stop exactly where it belongs. Now, even Muslims claim that Muhammad is in the Bible. Now, we can all read scripture and say Muhammad's not in Isaiah 48. And they'll say he is, and they'll say he's not. And you get nowhere. On that basis, you get absolutely nowhere, right? You're going to have to find additional evidence, corroborating evidence to prove your point. So biblical archaeology is important because it offers hard proof. History is important because it verifies claims with evidence. Scripture alone has led exactly to the problems that I've just been outlining here. This is where we are now. We need the supporting validation of tradition in the historical record for proof. Otherwise, we just have conflicting claims, right? So they also, so Protestants do say that Spirit is not the author of chaos. But yeah, Protestants openly try to establish roots with some of the Gnostic heretics. That is true. Pedro Lozamo, when I speak about the Protestant claims to succession, because the Catholic Church makes the claim of succession, right? From the popes down to Peter to Jesus. Okay? Understand. When now Protestants make the claim that they are the true Christians, they rescued the faith, they brought the true Christianity back. However, when you look at their claims to succession, like I said, they fizzle out in roughly the 12th century. And they literally, hordes of major names in Protestant history have made direct reference to flaming heretics as proof of their Christian lineage back to the beginning. Because these Christians, they appealed Christians, right, quotes, are heretics. They all end up pointing to heretics, whether it's John Wesley and the Methodists, whether it's the Anglican Church, and you'll find it, for instance, if you look at the Anglican Church, like in the 1900s, they said one thing. This was the history, and this is the lineage. In the 1600s, they were saying another thing. In the 1700s, they were saying another thing. In the 1800s, one other guy was saying something else. The claims are just wild. So it's clearly just nonsense. Okay, so now Mormons make extensive historical claims, as do Muslims. Many make false historical claims. Now, one of the reasons they want to stand on the Bible, that everyone says, well, it's in the Bible, is because it's not in history. You can argue a whole day in circles around the Bible, but once you go into history, Show me the history. Show me the evidence. Show me the proof. What verifies the Bible? Like, how do you know? Do we have the tomb of Jesus?